Fire lookout towers attract a very specific kind of person, someone willing to live alone on a mountain for months, cut off from towns, roads, and most human contact. The job sounds peaceful, but historically it has been dangerous, isolating, and in rare cases, deeply disturbing. These are the top 10 disturbing things fire watchers reported from remote lookout towers. In 1934, Pete McGuire was working alone as a fire lookout in Idaho. He was stationed at a remote tower miles from the nearest road, an area that required hours of hiking to reach. One morning, McGuire failed to report in. When Forest Service officials finally reached the tower, they found McGuire passed away inside with obvious signs that someone had done this to him. However, there was no forced entry, no sign of robbery, his supplies were untouched, his pay was still there. Nothing was missing. The most disturbing detail was access. Someone had deliberately traveled deep into the wilderness, climbed the tower, and killed a man whose job required him to be alone. No suspect was ever identified. The case went cold. After McGuire's death, many fire watchers began requesting firearms for protection. Some districts quietly allowed it, others refused. The killer was never caught. During the early 20th century, the wilderness in New Mexico was one of the most remote fire management areas in the country. 2 separate fire lookouts disappeared from this region years apart. Both were experienced, both had completed previous seasons, both vanished without leaving clear evidence behind. Search efforts found abandoned towers with personal items still inside, food left behind, gear untouched, and no remains were ever recovered. Officials suggested accidents or exposure, but seasoned wilderness searchers noted the same issue in both cases. There were no clear trails leading away from the towers, no broken terrain nearby that explained a fatal fall, and both cases remain unresolved. This story comes from a long Reddit post shared by someone claiming to have worked a seasonal fire lookout job in the western United States. According to the poster, everything was normal for the first few weeks. Routine radio check-ins, weather logging, long, quiet nights. Then they started noticing movement at night below the tower. Not animals, human-shaped movement, but always just beyond where their flashlight reached. The poster described one specific detail that stood out. Whatever was down there never approached the tower directly. It just stayed far enough to remain partially hidden. After several nights, they reported hearing their name being called from below. Quiet at first, then louder. They radioed it in and were told it was likely hikers or auditory hallucinations from the isolation. A few days later, they requested reassignment and left early. The post gained traction because of how detailed and restrained it was. No monsters, no dramatic ending, just the fear of being watched with no way to actually confirm it. Multiple documented cases exist of fire lookouts falling to their deaths, but one incident from the Pacific Northwest stands out. A lookout was found passed away at the base of his tower after failing to report in. The official cause of death was a fall. The problem was the structure itself. The tower had railings, enclosed stairs, and no obvious point where a fall would naturally occur without deliberate action or a struggle. Investigators found no signs of him doing this purposefully to himself, no note, no known mental health concerns. The incident was ruled accidental. Among other fire watchers, this case became a quiet, cautionary tale. Towers are high, isolation is dangerous, but sometimes the explanations feel incomplete. Another Reddit post, this one comes from someone claiming to have worked fire communications rather than the tower itself. They described receiving a radio transmission late at night from a fire lookout tower that was still staffed. The transmission used correct radio procedure, but something was off. The voice sounded flat and emotionless. It repeated the same sentence twice, word for word. When the dispatcher tried to clarify, the voice stopped responding. The next morning, they learned the lookout assigned to that tower had reported no radio use overnight. The post never claims anything supernatural. The writer admits it could have been interference or crossed signals, and what made it unsettling was how precise the transmission was and how wrong it sounded to someone trained to hear normal radio traffic. In the mid-1900s, a fire lookout in the Pacific Northwest was found passed away inside his tower after failing to report in. The official cause was listed as natural causes, likely related to a sudden medical event. What made the case unsettling to other fire watchers was the scene itself. The lookout had collapsed far from his bunk, his binoculars were on the floor, the radio microphone was unclipped and lying beside him, his logbook was open to the current day with the final entry unfinished. There were no signs of fire or wildlife intrusion, no indication he had been asleep or resting. Colleagues later pointed out that if a medical emergency had occurred, the positioning of the body and equipment suggested that he was actively responding to something when it happened. The ruling was never changed. The tower was staffed again the following season. This account comes from a Reddit user who claimed to work a seasonal fire lookout job in a mountainous region of the western United States. The poster explained that early into the season, food started going missing. At first, they blamed rodents. Then, entire sealed containers disappeared. One afternoon, while inspecting the base of the tower, they noticed flattened grass and makeshift bedding tucked beneath the structure. They also found trash that was not theirs. Food wrappers, cigarette butts. The poster reported this to their supervisor and was told it was likely just a transient passing through. That night, they heard movement directly below the tower. Slow, deliberate, not animal movement. They stayed awake until sunrise and requested immediate reassignment the next day. The post stood out because the writer emphasized fear of a real person, not something paranormal. Someone close enough to listen, someone who knew the lookout was alone. In the 1940s and 1950s, Forest Service records show repeated false fire reports originating from a specific lookout tower in the western United States. Each report followed protocol: wind direction, smoke density, location estimates. Each time, crews were dispatched. Each time, nothing was found. Eventually, supervisors visited the tower in person. The assigned lookout insisted the smoke was real and visible from his position. After multiple false alarms, the lookout was removed from duty. The tower continued to sit unused. What unsettled other watchers was this detail. After the tower was decommissioned, false reports stopped completely. The official conclusion cited stress and isolation. No explanation was ever given for why the reports were so consistent and so detailed and wrong. This story was shared on Reddit by someone claiming to have worked as a fire lookout for one season. They described waking up late at night to the sound of footsteps on the stairs of their tower. The steps were slow and steady, not running, not panicked. When the footsteps reached the trapdoor, they stopped. The poster called out several times, no response. They waited for the footsteps to descend, but they never did. After several minutes of silence, the poster radioed dispatch, who told them to stay inside and wait for daylight. When morning came, there were no footprints, no signs of anyone having climbed the tower. The poster finished the season, but said they never slept through the night again. This is one of the most unsettling confirmed cases tied to fire lookout work. A fire lookout failed to report in after multiple missed check-ins. A search party was dispatched. They found the lookout alive inside the tower. Physically, he was fine. No injuries, no signs of assault, no exposure. Mentally, something was very wrong. According to records and accounts from coworkers, the lookout was withdrawn, unresponsive, and refused to explain what had happened. He resigned shortly after. He never returned to fire lookout work. He never gave an official statement. Among other fire watchers, this case became deeply disturbing for one reason. Most incidents end in an explanation, even if it's unsatisfying. This one ended with silence. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!